It's always important that I begin these broadcasts by reminding people that I am not an attorney. And the things that I'm sharing with you are not legal opinions, or, well, they're my opinions, but I'm not qualified to give legal advice. And I just want everybody to know that. I'm just sharing general opinions, my personal opinions, formed from observing public domain evidence, including going to court. A lot of people don't realize that court proceedings are public. You can just go there. That makes the information stated in court public domain information. It's free. People can access it just by showing up. But the problem is, if the case is going on in New York City and you don't live here, there's going to be a huge expense associated with trying to get there. Now something is making a clicking sound. Hopefully that'll stop. But the point is, the city of Almaty, Kazakhstan, as far as I can tell, appears to be mopping the floor with Felix Sater. I think he's about to lose this case probably next week. So if you can't make it to New York City and you're interested in Felix Sater, I seem to be maybe the only person who's covering this trial. I don't really see too many reporters in there. I mean, there's a lot of attorneys, and you can tell who the attorneys are because they have cell phones with them. And the judge has to allow that, so he's not allowing that for reporters. And they also, when I ask them, do you work for Boyce Schiller, they say yes, and then they say, we can't talk to you. So the point is, and then there's like expert witnesses who are in there each day, different guys, but you can tell who they are because they go up to the stand and they testify. And then the third guy he's representing MEM Energy, not Felix Sater. I forget his name, but his father was there today. Friendly guy, very talkative. In the middle of court, I was like, dude, you can't talk to me. Let's talk afterwards. Then he was talking my ear off and he told me he was the father of the other attorney. And I told him, that guy doesn't want you talking to me. And when he came back from lunch, he was like, yeah, you're right, he does. So that was really funny. But the other thing that's going on is people saw on Twitter there was an associate. This was so stupid. I'm just constantly amazed by how dumb Jonathan Snyder is. He's doing a terrible job defending Felix Sater, who, as I said, I expect to lose the case. I don't think it'll be done tomorrow, but they're already talking about having people back on Monday. But there is, an associate of Snyder's who started antagonizing me. He stole my content. I mean, that's a straight up criminal act, stealing my property, my digital content, and distributing it internationally without my permission. I don't know why they would do that. Have people ever heard of this mythological creature, the griffin? I didn't know too much about it, so I just looked it up here on Wikipedia or whatever. And it's, I guess there's going to be a lot of meaning. It's got some biblical meaning, but it's this sort of bird, lion. I don't know what the hell it's all about, but they're saying that it's an allegorical symbol. So there's going to be an allegory that goes with it. But by medieval times in Europe, the griffin becomes an allegorical symbol representing the dualities and divisions between good and evil. As the guardian of treasure, the griffin may have stood for knowledge and wisdom, but it was a monster that could bring harm with its claws, and thus it represented injury and cruelty. So, yeah, that's an interesting, I'm very interested in names and symbols. I'm interested in who has this crappy Citroen, how this thing even still operates and why they bother keeping it. What does that say? A little warning here from the phone. So, yeah, that's an appropriate character, the griffin. It thinks it's doing good and guarding treasure, but it's actually just a vile, filthy creature that needs to be locked in a cage. See, that's what you do with violent birds
7 miles away
when they mix in polite society. But anyway, we'll worry about griffins in cages and mythological pests later. I want to talk to people about Felix Sater. I've been running through notepads like crazy. There's so many names in this thing. But I am learning a lot from going to this trial. I'm actually learning about money laundering. I mean, it's interesting. I've known about these various, now I just remembered what I forgot I wanted to look up before I came out here. So they're talking about money laundering, even though that's not one of the claims in this case. The claims in the case are conversion, which is like, you know, stealing money by sending it somewhere you said you weren't going to or something. Conversion, unjust enrichment, and I think they said money have received. I don't know, I couldn't quite tell. It's amazing how difficult they make it to understand what is going on in court. It really should all be video recorded so that everybody can see it. And it should be free to get the transcript. Like this whole, like having somebody sitting there type it, this is the stupidest thing in the world. I think in 1776 that might have made sense. But what should happen is the whole thing should be clearly recorded, and there should be a person who is in charge of monitoring the real-time transcription as done by artificial intelligence. I've done that on some pretty, you know, crappy sound quality videos recorded out in the middle of loud stuff, and you get a pretty good transcript. I think if you had a professional person monitoring that, because there are times that the court reporter is like stopping the proceedings and asking the person, whether it's the witness or the lawyer, to repeat what they said. I mean, for me, that's just an incredible, unacceptable break in the flow. And I mean, like I said, you know, if there were a valid argument like, hey, having a human do it is better and less prone to error, I might be able to be sold on that. But that's absolutely not true, because even in the limited number of transcripts that I've bought, which is like 3, each and every one of them had bad errors in it, including one got my name wrong, called me Jacob Goodman on the title page. How accurate could this person be if they don't even know my name? And by the way, it refers to me as Jason Goodman all throughout the rest of the document. It was one of the stupidest errors you can imagine. But so Felix Sater, this case, and again, people who think that Julie isn't a social engineer, or even if you think she is, go read her blog. I'm not telling anybody not to read what she says. The issue that I had was that she had some bizarre compulsion to come over to my Twitter line and counteract anything that I said about Sater, you know, with information from her blog. And so, you know, there's a lot of people who say a lot of things about what happened with Hunter Biden's laptop and Las Vegas. What are the things that we talk about that we've got theories that are different than what everybody else says? And I mean, look, it's true. Sometimes I'll see somebody saying something about Vegas and I'll say that's not correct, and I'll just post a video with John Cullen or whatever. But I'm not then going all up and down that person, searching their Twitter timeline for days and, you know, reporting 18 tweets. That chick is psychotic, and she's still gonna get sued. They're like, oh, what for? You can't sue me for anything. They like to argue on Twitter about that shit. When it gets served, you'll understand what it's about, and you'll hate it. You're gonna need a lawyer. It's gonna probably take 2 or 3 or 7 years. So, I mean, again, I don't understand why somebody in that position would antagonize me, this associate of Snyder's as well. That was one of the stupidest things I've seen so far, because it's like super documented, totally illegal, and Snyder's another one who's gonna get sued. I think at this point, they just want to have so many people coming at me with actionable behavior that it's more lawsuits than I could possibly issue. That seems to be what they're trying to do. Good news, I've already discovered that for me, there's now a good collection of people who have, not supposed to smoke on the Highline, good collection of people who have been trying to get orders enjoining me from suing them. So that's going to mean that they're not too likely to sue me, or at least threaten to sue me. I mean, I'm not saying I can go and do any kind of thing. Obviously, nobody should ever engage in intentional torts. You're going to get sued. Anyway, the point is, let's talk about Sater. Whatever it says on Julie's blog, I have become convinced is the FBI, DEA, Felix Sater story. And either Felix or somebody who wants to promote that story on Felix's behalf obviously motivate her to do that. It just doesn't make sense that a person with a kid, even if I wasn't threatening a lawsuit, would have all this time to mess around with me. Any sensible person can look at the past 7 years and understand that even if I'm losing these lawsuits, I have the ability to bring them. There was somebody else who said something stupid who was running a nonprofit that looked like a real problem, and I started saying, this thing seems like a fraud in my opinion. And she's like, I'm gonna sue you. What's your lawyer's phone number? I said, you're talking to my lawyer. Give me your lawyer's phone number. And she said, well, you're gonna have to pay for the phone call. I said, I'm not paying for your lawyer. You're gonna pay for your lawyer. And then she said, no, I won't give you the number. I was like, okay, how are you gonna sue me if you don't wanna give me your lawyer's phone number? So she went away. Not Julie, somebody else. So the first guy who was testifying today was a forensic accountant. Did I write down that guy's name? This was an American guy who had been hired by Boies Schiller. He was impressive. He, like by contrast, Felix Sater's lawyers look bad. They are a sloppy crew with not very crisp looking suits, shitty looking haircuts. It looked like Sater definitely got a haircut today. I think Snyder did too. And my read on that was, if you are confident and the case is going well and you know you didn't do anything wrong, you might let the haircut go for a week. But if you realize that everything in this case is crashing in on you, your lawyers are idiots, and you're about to lose, maybe that's part of the calculation. Let's get a haircut so that we at least look presentable. But what they were talking about with that accountant was a $115 million transaction that sent money from BTA, which is the bank in this, to something called trade stock. So this was interesting because money laundering isn't one of the charges, but they were talking about money laundering to just sort of explain what was going on. And that gets into, you know, people objecting because it's potentially irrelevant, and then the judge deciding if it's relevant or not. But they were talking about this $115 million that was somehow turned into 439 or 436. And that reminded me of FTX, because that was one of the arguments that they made. They stole all this money and then invested it in something that made money. So why can't we just give the money back and call it a day? And I forget what the legal argument was, but the point is, you can't do that. You can't. The analogy that I recall being made in FTX was like, you know, if you, let's say if you're a lawyer and somebody is suing your client for $1 million and you take his $100,000 retainer fee and go to Vegas and win $1 million but lose the case and give the client the million, you can't do that. So the point that the bank was getting at is, you can't steal $115 million from us, invest it and turn that into $400 million, and then say, well, this other transaction over here that you don't like, it was less than $300 million, so we just did that with the profits and you got the money back. It was such a bad cross-examination. I wanted to like smack Snyder and just be like, dude, how stupid are you? Because he was trying to get the accountant to basically admit that because this $300 million transaction had nothing to do with the $115 million, it was a different amount, that it wasn't related or it wasn't part of it or something like that. But the accountant, I mean, it was such a stupid premise. There was terrible cross-examination. There were lawyers for the plaintiff that I saw sleeping at a certain point towards the end of the day. None of the jury went to sleep, but one person in the gallery who was a lawyer for Boies Schiller, I noticed her sleeping because it was boring as hell. I was getting bored. Snyder just kept trying to get this guy to admit something that he wouldn't admit to. The accountant was saying, you can't steal the $115 million, go to Vegas, make $400 million, and then say we used this money for something else. The accountant took a Fannie Willis moment. He said that cash is fungible, meaning you can't say this other transaction took place with less money. It's like once you, what the accountant said that was interesting, because they let them talk a little bit about money laundering, because they were talking about this accountant's investigation, and he said that's the whole point of money laundering, is to commingle the funds with some other transaction to make it appear legitimate. Like, in other words, if you're making $100,000 a day selling heroin, and then you open a pizza place, the idea is you put the $100,000 from the heroin into the pizza place, and even if you sell $4 worth of pizza, you record $104,000 worth of pizza sales, and the idea is nobody knows who's coming into the pizza place and giving you $2 for a slice of pizza. So by mingling the stolen funds with this legitimate business, that's the laundry. All the money is spinning around in a washing machine, and once it comes out of the pizza place, you put it on the books of the pizza place. Now I can go put it in the bank and say, hey, you know, Heroin Business Pizza Inc. has a bank account. The heroin guy on the corner can't get the bank account. So that seemed to fail. If I was on the jury, that whole line of cross-examination from Jonathan Snyder to the forensic accountant, no, excuse me, it wasn't Jonathan Snyder at first. It was the third guy for MEM whose father was trying to chat with me, and they were getting reprimanded by the judge. The other side has not been instructed. At one point today, the judge shouted at Snyder to stop, because the other side kept standing up and objecting, because he was just asking the guy for nothing but hearsay. Now again, everything I'm telling you is my interpretation as a layperson just going to court. I could be wrong, and if you're a lawyer watching saying, oh, Jason doesn't know what he's talking about, you could go review one of my 3D movies and I'd say, well, this is a lawyer not knowing anything, but you could still have opinion of it. I'm giving everybody the layperson's opinion. But so hearsay is they were asking him, hey, what did this other person say? And you can't do that. It's when you're asking the witness questions about the truthfulness of something, you can't rely on something somebody else told them. You could say, like, yeah, I had a conversation with that guy, but if that guy told you Felix Sater did or didn't steal money, this witness can't testify to what that guy said for the truthfulness of that statement. They could just say, I had a conversation with the person, but if you need the testimony from that other person about the stealing of the money, that person should be a witness. Now, what do we have going on here? Some sort of live Highline event, unlike anything I've seen before. What do we have? This is just like a dinner. What are they doing?
My name is Carol, and I'm from area of Georgia.
Is this a Juneteenth something? Hosted by? No, need to register. What is this?
There was a church on nearly every corner. And
what's going on today, guys? What is that?
This is Pride at the Highline.
What is it?
Pride at the Highline.
Pride at the Highline. Got it. Something pride oriented. Well, at least they're not naked, so that's okay.
I was a huge church kid. When I was 10 years old, I found my faith family at the corner of Mars Hill and Due West Road. It was a big church, brick church with a large steeple. Open the doors, there's all the people. Woo-hoo. I thought I found my family, people who would love me.
Look at that, LGBTQIA+. When will they stop expanding that? Oh, that's the thing over on the other side of the Highline. So I don't know, some kind of pride event here happening on the Highline. Don't forget to become a sponsor on Odyssey.com. Certain socialist mythological griffins think that they have the right to take my work because information should be free. He's wrong about that. The information is free, so if he wants to come to New York City and go into the court and get the information, that's free. When I make a video about it, this video content becomes my intellectual property and only I get to decide who gets to distribute it. not asshole griffins, mythological creatures. They're not allowed to do that. But people who appreciate the show and the reporting and want it to continue, they realize that this is not a socialist society and people need money to buy food. So I want to thank those people who have sponsored the show by going to odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. So let's talk about this money laundering. So this other guy who is involved, there are a lot of people who are involved. There's Tatachev, who was the guy running the bank who got shot on a hunting trip. And it was like a hit because that guy, what's his name? Ablazov. it's a really crazy name. And he's like the head guy who's Mukhtar Ablyazov. That's it. So that guy has been convicted in absentia in Kazakhstan of having Tatachev murdered. And then so he takes over the bank. So this is the crazy part. So the other guy who's involved is Krapanov. He's the mayor of Kazakhstan. And so what he did is, in 2021, his wife, he kind of denationalized a school building. So the mayor of Kazakhstan sells this school building, kindergarten building 186, for $354,133. But that's probably a conversion from Kazakhstan money, so I don't know. But anyway, he sells the kindergarten 186 building for $354,133. That is in 2001. He privatizes it and sells it to the wife. Then, in 2003, the wife, Krapanov's wife, sells it to an entity controlled by Ablyazov for $1.87 million. And they were asking the accountant, this was Snyder, he was asking the accountant, did they rebuild it? Did they, enhance it in any way? Did the neighborhood get built up? Was there a commensurate increase in the price of real estate around there? And this is where the judge was getting annoyed, because that had nothing to do with the case, and this accountant guy had nothing to do with that. This was the craziest thing. So the accountant, this forensic accountant, was specifically assigned with the task of figuring out all these transactions about how this school got sold and where the money came from and all this and that. And it seems that he put together a pretty comprehensive understanding of how that all went. And then the third lawyer, I should have looked up his name. The guy whose father was talking to me, who's the one of the three lawyers who is not representing Sater, he kept hammering the accountant with what I thought was a stupid argument, a flawed argument. He said, what's the high level, the basics of accounting? It's profits and losses, right? Money's coming in, money's going out. And that's like, well, so you're a lawyer, you sue people and you defend people, right? It's like, well, yes, that's true, but that's just a totally unhelpful and inaccurate oversimplification, was sort of what the accountant dude was trying to say. And he was asking him, why does this big report that you've put together about the stealing of this school building and lots of other stuff, how come it didn't account for the 1 point whatever billion that they recovered during the course of this investigation, and why didn't you account for that? And the guy just said, that's not what I was assigned to do. I was investigating this stuff with the stealing of the money, not balancing the ledger. That's like a different function of an accountant. And nobody said that. I get annoyed when I'm sitting there and I see people unable to communicate or understand an idea, and I know what they're trying to say, and I'm like, I wish I could just project my thought into the guy's brain and be like, dude, why don't you just tell him, I was investigating the theft, I wasn't balancing their books. So it wasn't about the money coming in. And by the way, if you steal 144 million and then it gets recovered, that doesn't mean you didn't steal it. Anyway, we found out that this is a dragon from Game of Thrones, but it just doesn't read at all. Nobody knows what it is. This is maybe the worst advertisement for anything I've ever seen. Again, that's an opinion, you might disagree. So the other thing that went on is they had a lot of charts today, a lot of pictures of flow charts and things, and this stuck out in my mind. So this was money, this was one subset of money stolen from BTA Bank. Okay, so they got these different organizations, this fake shell companies basically. This place, daily, what is that word? It's hard to read. But anyway, they're telling you to call ahead for a chicken dinner. I kind of like these chalk drawings on restaurant menus. It's a good chicken. Okay, so they got all these different organizations that were created. And so, see, this is interesting because for money laundering, again, it's like, I don't really have a good sense of how this kind of criminal stuff, basically, you go into this store and steal something, that's theft. That's a simple concept. But I'm not a really sophisticated financial, I like deposit checks and spend money and earn money. That's kind of it. I'm not like, it's like Charles can tell you, sometimes he just throws out words where he's talking about stuff that maybe people don't know. Securities, equities, that's simple. But I guarantee there's people watching right now who don't know exactly what that means. Maybe they have some idea. But I'm just saying, if you are a sophisticated financial person and a criminal, that looks like a good party up there, doesn't it? Hidden Leaf. These sophisticated criminals have all kinds of plans that I don't know anything about. So they've got 5 companies that they were talking about, okay? One of them was the World Health Network. This is funny. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then Trump Soho, which is I think it's a hotel, or I think it's a condo building and a hotel. That's down on maybe Spring Street or something. We walk by that pretty often, but I don't think it's Trump Soho anymore. I'm pretty sure he sold it. But anyway, they've got World Health Network, Trump Soho, the Syracuse Center, the Tri-County Mall, which was a big deal that they were upset about. And the final one is the consulting payments to GHS. And I'm not exactly sure what GHS is. I haven't been able to attend every minute of this trial because I've been balancing a lot of different stuff that I need to do. So I was in and out of there all week. Ooh, that dog doesn't want to go anywhere. But, so here's what I find interesting about this. So the World Health Network, there was a box in front of this where all the money from BTA came in and they show it going to each of these different things and then those go to something else. And the idea is to run all the money through these complicated transactions and hide the owners and hide what it's for and just make it super confusing to not, be able to trace where all the money is going, like Hunter Biden. And it seems to be actually what the Flynns are doing as well, with Brisa Suaves, and a nonprofit pays that thing to reimburse it. Obviously they are thinking, hey, nobody's going to even know that we have this. Even if they see it, it's set up on the nonprofit as getting paid to do something. Like, you're going to have to do a pretty in-depth investigation to even figure this out. And when they set it up, I guess they figured no one will check. But then they start to mess with me, and I start looking at all the stuff that they're doing and figure some of this stuff out. Again, I'm not really well positioned to do anything about it other than yap about it. But hopefully somebody who can do something about it will see it and do something. I don't know if they will or won't. I can only hope. But so out of these 5 companies, the World Health Network, which also, what is that? I have had a couple of companies. One of them was called Multimedia System Design, and that was called that because I was setting up networks for people who were involved in multimedia production, sound, video, photography. I was designing their systems. Then I created 21st Century 3D, which, what does that esoteric mean have to do with? Well, I started it right in like 2001 or 2002 when everybody was talking about the millennium and the new century, and it was all about stereoscopic photography and animation and motion picture production, so that made sense. But this World Health Net, it just sounds so generic. You know, these other Litco, they're dealing with litigation and it's a company. I mean, this just sounds like the kind of names that you come up with when you're a stupid asshole sitting in your house counting your stolen money, just trying to come up with a million different company names. And by the way, you look these people up, yeah, sure, there are serial entrepreneurs who get involved in lots and lots of companies, but it's a thing. It stands out. There's a couple things like that. So the World Health Network got $316,748 of this money. I want to save the Trump Soho for last because it stands out in my mind. The Syracuse Center got $567,448. Tri-County Mall, $20,377,246. The consulting payments to GHS, which is not the entity. Felix Sater was Litco, and that was like a subcontractor to that, what's that thing called? The, Akurum? No. I forget the name. But it was that intelligence company that we were talking about the last time I spoke about this. Look at this. They've got now an art display in this mall. This is new. But the thing that stands out to me is that all of these things are getting these gigantic 6 and even 8-figure, 6, 7, and 8-figure payments. And the Trump Soho project only got $75,000. Why did all these other things get $316,748? It almost seems like maybe there was some expenses there or a bunch of things that added up to just whatever the number is, and then $75,000. Why is the Trump Soho project getting so much less than all these others, and why is it the round number of $75,000? I don't know, but it stuck out in my mind, and it made me think, is this just some payment that Sater made to that project so that he could put some stink on Trump? Again, this trial is not about that, so they didn't go into that at all. They just were showing all of that different payments that were made with this stolen money. And the other thing that, Snyder's team, they're doing things that seem very underhanded, like below the belt, right? And when you're watching boxing and one fighter is constantly punching below the belt, that's usually not the stronger fighter. That's a weak move to try to just get something out there that weakens the opponent and it violates the rules, but it's not enough to get you disqualified. He's trying to put information into the jury's head to create this, reasonable doubt. So he was asking the accountant, I think, if he was aware that the former justice minister of Kazakhstan is a partner at Boyce Schiller Flexner. And they objected to that right away, and the judge got angry and wouldn't let him ask. Because that was clearly a low blow in my view, I thought. So then the other thing that they yelled at them for, there were letters going back and forth where they're trying, the Felix Sater team is trying to get certain evidence in, but there's rules. You can't just surprise them with evidence. You have to give it to the other side, and you've got to agree that this is authenticated evidence. You can't just show up and start showing things to the jury. So there are all these letters going back and forth. Pretty busy in here today, I guess. It's that time when everybody's getting on the train. But that's interesting to see as well. Pretty damn disorganized. But they were trying to get the judge to take judicial notice. And you know what? This is something George's brother does all the damn time. And I learned something about judicial notice in the Federal Rules of Evidence today. So the judge cited Federal Rule of Evidence 201 about giving judicial notice to stuff, and Snyder's getting yelled at because the judge is telling him you can take notice that a document was filed, but that doesn't allow you to just automatically assume that the contents of the document are true. So that's interesting. And I guess that would vary. Like, in other words, if the thing that you're asking them to take judicial notice of is like an order from a judge in another case, that's different. But if you're just saying, hey, that's the style that George's brother does it in, like just says, hey, this thing was filed, and so here, now it's evidence. This judge was not having it. Now this is Judge Colt, and remember, he's the judge presiding over.
On track 6, last call between 174 to Baltimore, on track number 6.
So if you want to go to Baltimore, you get stabbed there tonight instead of here. But this is the same tactic that George's brother uses to just, judicial notice all over the place. He loves telling them to take judicial notice. And what it had previously done was it would prompt me to respond. Because I had the mistaken thought that if I didn't counteract all this nonsense that George's brother was putting into court, that I would somehow be behind the 8 ball. But in fact, what it did was it got the judge to say, look, both of you idiots are filing a load of nonsense. Nobody's allowed to file anything anymore. And ultimately that hurt me, because there were things that I wanted to file, and George's brother's strategy of just making such a mess out of the docket that you just couldn't move on there. That case eventually went nowhere and fell apart, but again, this is not lawyering. And when you try to pit a lawyer against a moron like George's brother, it breaks the relationship with the lawyer. That's what happened with Larry Klayman. I don't believe that that's what happened with Jonathan Snyder, but again, these guys are experts at this. They've been doing it for, in George's brother's case, 32 years. Let me not say they're experts, but they're practiced at it. They're like the assholes I used to deal with in LA, who I would show up with my 3D camera, and they'd say, I've been doing this for 30 years, get out of my way, and they would fuck it up. And I came to the realization that when you started doing this 30 years ago, you didn't know what you were doing, and you've just been getting better at that for the past 3 decades. Now get out of the way and let me fix this. That happened a lot to me in LA, and I think it might be happening now. So they're well practiced at this, and I'm figuring it out as I go along. But that just jamming in the evidence, they just come off as sloppy, unprofessional, unprepared, and they're going to lose. That's my opinion. Boies, Schiller, Flexner, as much as I don't like David Boies and have questions about that law firm, it's a very professional team. They are prepared, they are well groomed, and they look a lot more professional. They're behaving a lot more professional. They seem more prepared. They're not showing up late after breaks. Snyder has been yelled at more than any other attorney that I have witnessed anywhere. See, that truck is blocking the walk. Don't walk, son. I guess we'll walk. So Snyder got yelled at like crazy. Yeah, he's blocking the sign and now he's trying to run me over. So they wouldn't let them, he wouldn't take judicial notice of that document. It did not do what Snyder's crew wanted it to do. And he just basically yelled at them about the rules of evidence. And then the judge got really mad and sua sponte just said, I'm striking that. So Snyder's team, sua sponte, stricken from the record for offering summation during the cross-examination. That was it. So this was the third lawyer, he was like consolidating and paraphrasing what the witness had said and trying to basically force him into saying that he didn't balance the money that was recovered against the money that was stolen. And I could tell the judge was getting pissed. Again, even if If you were just like going by the vibrations in the room and didn't know the details of the case or how court works or anything like that, the vibe is that they're going to lose. They're getting yelled at, they look sloppy, their questions are stupid, the cross-examination is boring and putting people to sleep. So, oh yeah. Then they tried to make a big deal out of the fact that this guy, Matthew Schwartz is his name. I think I said Michael Schwartz the other day. But that he worked on the Madoff case, and they were saying all this stuff about Madoff and blah, 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 obviously trying to make it look like they did something bad. And then when he came up on the, I guess, is it the redirect or whatever, he was like, which side were we on? And he said that you were defending the United States of America and put Madoff in jail. So that's pretty funny. I mean, that's the thing. It's sort of very obvious that who's in the right, in my opinion. Oh yeah, and they were saying like, oh, isn't it true that Ablyazov and this other guy, they owned all the voting shares of stock in the bank. They own the company, right? And he said, yes. And he said, so weren't they stealing from themselves? And he was like, no, because when you deposit money in the bank, that's the money that they're lending out. They stole money from the bank customers. I mean, that seemed kind of obvious. They're not stealing money from themselves. And then there was something called UKB6 that was making loans to offshore entities. I think that was the thing that was making the loans to things that had no collateral and no assets. So think about that. They basically are like, hey, let's take control of this bank. We'll get a lot of people to deposit money in the bank. And I think everybody knows about fractional reserve, where if you put $1,000 in the bank only needs to keep 100 of that 1,000 on hand, 900 of it can be loaned out. So the bank never really has all your money there anyway, but they're sort of counting on not everybody is going to come to the bank to withdraw their money at once. And I guess it kind of works, but in this bank, they just took the money and started giving it out as loans to fake entities, allegedly that they controlled. And so Snyder was yelled at again and told to stick to redirect, because they're losing. And basically all of the redirect was objected to, and then he sat down. So it was just like coming up to bat and totally striking out. Now this thing is finally open. So I guess they're trying to make this a little bit more like that section over by the other mall over there. And so they've opened this pickleball thing, which is crazy. We never had anything like this in New York before. I mean, like I said, this is like Vegas, where you got more real estate and money than you know what to do with. Oh my God, this is Plaza 33. Perfect. Because we're on 33rd Street. But I don't know, this is, for all the time they spent constructing it, not really that impressive. We got a lot of cops over there texting. All of them have the phone out, ready to text. Might as well fire them. So what else? Oh yeah, this was important stuff about money laundering. So, oh yeah, this was cool. So the next expert witness they had, the judge became angry and told that third guy, that was where he yelled stop, not at Snyder. This fucking guy. See, if those cops were fucking paying attention, they could give that maniac a ticket. I don't mean to interrupt you while you're busily texting, probably conducting personal business, but there's a guy who just rode a bicycle through here. Isn't that illegal? Excuse me, officer. Isn't it against the law to ride a bicycle on the sidewalk? I'm trying to report a crime to you, and you're walking away. Excuse me, can one of you guys pay attention to me, please? This guy was just texting, and I asked him if he could deal with the bicycle, and he turned his back to me. What are you guys doing? NYPD is a failure. You guys suck. Fucking losers. So then they had Claude Arnold. This was super interesting because Claude Arnold, what are you guys looking at? Now you're looking at me. They want to do something to me. He's back to texting. Back to texting. Perfect. Fucking losers in costumes. This guy was very interesting, Claude Arnold. He was a Department of Homeland Security Investigations, HSI, 27 years. He was a special agent with that, and his specialty was the E2 visa, which is a type of visa for investors. So they've extended this plaza over to here. This was sort of like this has been a little bit of a homeless nook for much of its life. And then this was a Lenny's sandwich place, but I guess now it's Roberta's Gelato. I don't know, this doesn't seem like a super useful thing. Look at that, this guy's bussing the drinks. It's interesting. People probably think he works here. Anyway, so Claude Arnold, super interesting. He was investigating a visa application for this Elvira, this lady's name, Kudryashova. And so she was controlling a company called Crownway. And so what he explained, the way that this thing works, the E2 visa, is that if you own and control a company and you want to invest in the United States and like bring that company to the United States and create jobs and stuff like that, they will let you do that. And it's a fast track to a visa. Sort of, the guy even said, it's sort of like when you marry somebody. You'll get a visa and a green card, a green card to stay, but they want to check to make sure that you're not just paying somebody $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever to marry them. People have heard about that, marriage scams to get visas. This guy's job was to make sure you're not trying to scam by saying you have a company and then not. So he's saying that this Elvira, she didn't control this company. He determined that it was a shell, and that Felix Sater directed this $3 million transfer because when he interviewed her, she didn't know anything about the company or what the source of money was or what it did or anything like that. So she doesn't control it. It's a shell entity for money laundering, was this guy's testimony. And there was this Dan Redder, who was an immigration attorney who was introduced to Elvira by Felix Sater. And Elvira was trying to get the visa, but she wasn't the source of the money. And this Claude guy had determined that the money came from criminal activity. And this woman is Krapanov's sister. So Krapanov, remember, he's the mayor. He's the one who's selling the school and doing all that kind of stuff. So these guys are just like mad criminals, it seems. And they had this thing, this is the company. RPM Morrow was given from Sater to Elvira, is what this guy said in his testimony. Not that other company, RPM Morrow. And then there was also other divisions of that RPM. The World Health Network, I believe, came out of that. So she was supposed to be directing and developing it, but she wasn't a doctor, had no experience in the healthcare industry, didn't know what this company did, didn't know how it made money, et cetera, et cetera. Then there was this attorney, Arnie Hers, who was working with Sater to get the visa for Elvira. Yeah, RPM Networks and the World Health Net. And then Snyder was reprimanded for asking questions that he was not allowed to ask on redirect or whatever. And so the question that they're primarily asking is, was BTA Bank fraudulently induced into this contract with Litco because they weren't specifically told that Felix Sater owned Litco. And then Snyder spent a lot of time trying to get to the motive for bringing the lawsuit, and the judge said the motive for bringing the lawsuit is not at issue here. They're allowed to bring a lawsuit. We're trying to determine if this guy stole the money or no. So he told him to shut up about that. Then, yeah, this was cool. So this was what I really wanted to see today. So Robert Wolf testified today. Now, Robert Wolf was the attorney for Sater when he signed the 1998 cooperation agreement with Valerie Caproni and Andrew Weissman. Oh, one more thing. So when that guy Claude, he was the last one to testify before lunch. So when we were leaving the building, I had an opportunity to speak to him. I don't want to speak to these guys about anything to do with the case because I'm very confident that Felix Sater is going to lose, and I don't want to have anything to do. Remember that time on the Imran Awan case where something happened and then Chris, what the hell was Imran Awan's lawyer's name? He made some kind of motion in court saying that I, Jason, had inadvertently disclosed something and that it was going to screw up the case. I just don't want to interact with these lawyers or witnesses because then they're going to say, oh, mistrial. But when we were leaving the building, I said to that guy, Claude Arnold, I said, so you work for Homeland Security Investigations. Do you know why Homeland Security Investigations raided P. Diddy instead of the FBI? And he said, well, a lot of people don't know anything about Homeland Security Investigations. There's a lot of crossover. He said anything having to do with the border. So that had to do with human trafficking. That had to do with whatever, dude. You're not on the show. The fucking loser. He said that the HSI deals with anything to do with the border and that case had to do with human trafficking and drug trafficking. So that was probably why. And then I said to him, yeah, but it's been alleged that Sean Combs is an FBI confidential human informant, and people have suggested that it's possible. What are you doing, man? Get the fucking bicycle off the sidewalk. Riding up my ass with that fucking thing. Fucking assholes. All over the place here. So what he said was, yeah, that's possible. I said, you know, maybe did somebody, they knew that it was FBI, and so they went to Homeland Security Investigations. He said, yeah, that's a possibility. So I thought that was interesting, unrelated to Felix Sater, but how often do you get to speak to a Homeland Security investigation guy? So that was that. So then after lunch, Robert Wolf was testifying, and Robert Wolf, this was super weird. So Robert Wolf, we know, has been Felix Sater's attorney for many, many years. I think in 1991, when he stabbed the guy in the face, he said he met him in the early 90s. He was vague about it. He said early 90s, so 1998 is the late 90s. I do believe Robert Wolf was his attorney because he is a criminal defense attorney, and Sater stabbed the dude in the face, allegedly. So remember, this is now, so the prosecution rested. The Almaty, not the prosecution, the plaintiff. Almaty, Kazakhstan is done now. And so now the defense gets to present their case. And so this Robert Wolf, I believe, was the first, or maybe I missed actually, I couldn't believe this. I missed Felix Sater's testimony. It must have been very short because I had something else that I needed to do during the lunch break, and I got back there at like 2:30 instead of 2, and they were already done with Sater. So it's kind of all right. I can't imagine he would have said anything other than a bunch of lies. But we got to hear from Robert Wolf, and he said he met Sater in the early 1990s, that he he focuses on government investigation and white-collar criminal defense. Isn't that interesting? So maybe Robert Wolf is one of these attorneys who has a security clearance. I would think he has to if he's aware of the Felix Sater secret agreement and signing it on his behalf. That's somebody from another much healthier country. This is a sketchy character, this Robert Wolf. I encountered him in the men's room and I asked him if he knew Valerie Caproni, and he was just very cagey. Kind of a fucking asshole, in my opinion. He said he socialized with Sater. I don't know what Snyder was trying to prove with this, unless he's trying to get in front of something that the plaintiffs are going to go after. But he asked Robert Wolf, so Robert Wolf has been practicing for 41 years. Looks good for a guy in his 60s. He's very fit. Robert Wolf looked like a very well put together, nice suit, nice haircut, healthy. Didn't look like a messy slob like the current lawyers that Sater is dealing with. But he seems to me like he's a shark and not friendly. But then again, you know, what the hell is he going to say to me? I'm asking him about sensitive stuff that he doesn't want to talk about, and he doesn't want to talk about it. So he said that Snyder asked him if he is going to do more business with Sater, if he could estimate what percentage of his income comes from dealing with Sater. And they went through a whole thing about how he hasn't been prepped and he doesn't know what questions are going to be asked and that he's not a coached witness. And Robert Wolf said that it was a very, very, very small portion of his overall income from the 41 years in practice of dealing with Sater. But then he asked him if he was friends with Sater, and he said sort of like, yeah, I would consider him a friend. And Robert Wolf's original answer sounded to me like the type of thing you would say about, like, in other words, I had employees who worked for me for, 10 years or whatever, and it's not like we went to high school together and we were friends and that's how we know each other, but these were friendly guys that I had a good relationship with, and if somebody asked me under oath, are we friends, I would have said approximately what this guy said. We had a friendly relationship and whatever. Oh my God, look at this tiny little dog. This might be the smallest dog I've ever seen. How old is that dog? Well, that guy's not saying anything, but that's a tiny, tiny little dog. The weird part was, Robert Wolf made it sound like they had a professional relationship that was cordial and friendly, but then Snyder went on and said, oh, well, did you socialize with him? Yeah. Did you ever go to dinner with him? And he said, yeah. And I said, oh, well, you might do that with your lawyer and it might be pretty normal. There's lawyers I've gone to dinner with and that's pretty much it. But then he said, and your wife and Sater's wife have been at dinner together. And I was like, wait, this is getting a little bit more personal. And you've been on vacation together. And I was like, what? Who the hell is going on vacation with their lawyer? This sounds like an unusually close relationship. So it seemed like a stupid line of questioning from Snyder to me, but they went on vacation. Extremely small portion, that's what he said, verbatim, extremely small portion of his overall income. So why did he go on vacation with him and all that? Then they were talking about this confidential assistance agreement, which the essence of this case, remember, is that the bank says they did not know that Felix Sater was the principal. They didn't know that Felix Sater was the principal of this Litco when they hired him. And the issue that they have is, as far as I can tell, the bank is basically saying Felix Sater seems to have known all these guys who stole the money and then basically came to them and was like, hey, why don't you hire me and I'll help you get all this money back? And he just sort of like called all his buddies and got the money and then kept like 20 million of it, allegedly. Could be wrong. And then I wrote, this is a pretty big admission by Wolf. He said that because they were asking him these questions about 2013 when this agreement was signed, did they know that Sater was involved with this investigation through Litco? And Robert Wolf admitted that Sater wanted to keep his name as far away from this agreement as possible. Now they're saying that's because he was afraid that all these mobsters in Kazakhstan were going to kill him, but it's a very suspicious set of circumstances, if you ask me. And there's one other thing that I thought of today. When I was looking into all these cases with Felix Sater, this just came up again today. He's in a lot of lawsuits. There was this lawsuit here. This woman, this person is like, what does it say? She's Mariah Carey's former manager. This Stella, but Stolper is her married name. She's got a Russian name. But Felix is friends with her from back in the day, childhood, I think from Russia, or maybe from coming to the United States, I don't know. But this woman has married an American, so that's how she gets that last name. And somewhere in this article, which is too small for me to read right now, it tells us her name. Well, but wait, so she sues him. What she's saying is Felix Sater was staying at her house and then somehow with this other guy create a back door into her computer and was stealing her information. It's very Imran Awan of him. But I don't know, it just makes me wonder, why does he care about this lady if she's Mariah Carey's whatever? But so then here's the lawsuit. This lady sued him. Yeah, there it is, Bolko, whatever, some complicated Russian name. She's saying that, you know, Felix stole the money. Oh, this is the stipulated agreement. So this is the settlement for the case. He didn't win the lawsuit, he settled it with her. And I mean, look at this. This dude loves signing settlement agreements because then going on into perpetuity, we have his declaration here. Let's take a look at this. So here he signed it with her. I don't know if he paid the $50,000, but he's saying that he's accused of taking this money and this stuff, and he denies those accusations, but in order to resolve the matter, he's going to stipulate to certain things and pay her $50,000. I don't know if he ever paid her the 50, but look at how this guy operates. I don't know if he did or didn't hack the computer, but if he did, he probably realizes that he could just do that, go into court with Wolf or Snyder or Caproni, or I mean, this guy's got the lawsuit situation pretty wired. He can get away with stuff that most normal people cannot, and it almost seems to me that his attorneys here know that. Get that bicycle off the sidewalk. Don't tell people excuse you. It's insane. The cops are standing around doing nothing. People are riding bicycles. Those cops should be fired. Terrible attitude. So what is Felix Sater up to? I don't know, but I don't think Julie knows either. And you know what? If Julie were honest, she would have had a conversation with me about Felix Sater when I first contacted her. Or she would say something like, oh, wow, you're in New York and you're going to the trial every day? Well, I don't think you've got this part right, but why don't we, you know, whatever. Like, I don't understand her attitude of coming at me, saying everything that I'm saying is lying, and working so hard. Like, look at that, she almost lost her Twitter account over the fight. I think most people realize it doesn't make any sense how she was acting. And there's a lot of that around this case, you know? If Felix Sater had done no wrong and was confident in his legal team, like when I was going up against Robert David Steele, George's mentally ill, wife-swapping, Operation Paperclip Nazi brother would send all kinds of tweets like, oh, everybody go to court tomorrow, Jason's gonna be in court. And I was sort of like, yeah, I don't care. So what? They can be in court. I actually thought that was kind of cool. People would come watch the trial. I was like, you know, a little bit like OJ or something. It's all this enthusiasm for the trial. I mean, I don't know. I don't care. I just figured I didn't do anything wrong. I was very naive at that time from the standpoint of trusting the integrity of the court. I figured I'm going to go in there and I'm going to tell them the truth, and these guys are never going to get anywhere with lies. Now remember, that was level 1 of Donkey Kong. After I defeated that, you know, they then went up the ladder, and when we got to the Emmys and dealing with Caproni, these were much more capable lawfare practitioners as compared to Stephen Biss, who was pretty useless, and they were able to lie and get away with it. Get that fucking bicycle off the sidewalk! Anyway, that's it, everybody. Have a nice day. I hope people will sponsor the show. I'm sorry for people who don't like me yelling at bicycles, but it's a huge problem. We have people walking down the street looking at their phones, and this guy comes riding with a bicycle. Get the bicycle off the sidewalk. It's against the law. You understand that? Are you delivering into this building right now?